you something about where I grew up. It was so cold, our eyelashes froze together at recess. We had two kinds of school cancellations, snow days and freeze your face off days. I spent those days roller skating laps around our basement. I had a lot of free time to think about what I wanted to be when I got older. And I didn't want to be an astronaut or the president or a movie star. I wanted to be a ventriloquist. Meet Mortimer Snerd. I took him everywhere, to the grocery store, out for pancakes, and occasionally bowling. It was the first time I had the idea of being something. Then I turned 9, and I dumped him to be a chef, and then a doctor. Now my thing is fly fishing. I'm crazy about fly fishing. So let's talk about you. Right now, you all want and work really hard for certain things. Raise your hand if you're a musician, a writer, an artist. Who's a tech expert? Who does theater? Sports? Who volunteers? You're full-time students and you do all of these things. So how did you find these things? Well, you were curious, it was fun, and you were passionate about them. When people learn that I'm a therapist to kids and young adults, they always ask, aren't you worried about kids these days? With their technology and all, they have no social skills. No, I'm not. The emotional intelligence of a 10th grader today exceeds what we had going on when we were juniors in college. Plus, your generation is creating a new social and emotional norm. You're purposeful, inclusive, and self-aware. You do all of these things. You are all of these things. It's amazing. But in my job, I sometimes encounter circumstances where it's not so amazing. The pressure to build a college application or a viable career path pushes kids to maintain activities that they no longer like, or may even hate. Some kids feel pressure to pursue academic subjects because they excel in them versus find them interesting. It seems like childhood has become a checklist. Do this and do that to compete for a happy and successful life. You need grades, grit, experience. You need wit. You should be confident but humble, active but not anxious, and well-rounded but also focused. It's no wonder kids these days feel so much pressure to be perfect. I'll share something with you. I did the checklist once. I totally nailed it. And I found myself years later crying in a bathtub, eating a potato. True story. I got what I thought would be right for me. The thing is, completing the checklist and doing it well does not always mean that the thing you're working for ends up working out. It turns out success is fluid. It can change and you can change. The question is, are you doing something solely for a future outcome, or are you loving it now? So why do kids, why do you do things you don't like? Why would you stick with it? Each of you is different, but I see 4 pretty common reasons. The first reason is that you might have done something for so long that you're pretty much on autopilot. It's just what you do. And the second reason is that you might be thinking of a future payoff. So you might stick with competitive swimming to lead to a degree, to lead to a secure job. The third reason is that you might feel that your parents would be disappointed if you stopped doing something that they invested in over many years. And finally, the fourth reason, you could feel pressure because maybe it's what your friend group does. And the prospect of losing out on time with friends, or maybe even losing friendships, introduces second guessing. It just feels too risky. When you stick with things you don't like for the wrong reason, it produces bad outcomes. And by bad outcomes, I mean you end up working as an accountant who hates math, or you end up working as a trapeze artist who's afraid of heights, or you end up working as a honey-hating beekeeper who's also allergic to bees. Seriously though, it's not that the thing you're doing is so bad, but what if you don't really love it? So should you give up soccer, something you've done for a really long time, you're pretty good at, but you don't love, in exchange for something you're passionate about, like maybe restoring a classic sports car with your mom or your dad? One of the coolest parts of being a kid is that you know what makes you tick. You don't look to others for approval, you just do your thing. And then around age 10 or 11, outside influences like parents, peers, and social media really start to matter. And it gets confusing, because it's hard to tell where your passion and curiosity end and these external influences begin. So what is the solution? Well, I'll tell you what the solution isn't. Quitting. Quitting baseball when you hit a rough patch, or quitting piano when you're in a bad mood, or quitting the fall play when you have a relationship conflict. The solution is being the real you and doing the things you love. So when you're trying to decide how to spend your time and energy, how do you know if you're making a knee-jerk decision or a thoughtful one? Well, I bet you've never, ever had an adult tell you they have all the answers, right? I don't have the answers, but what I do have is an authenticity assessment. It has 4 really important questions that you can ask yourself when making these kinds of decisions. First question, is your thing consistent with your values? So let's say you're a diehard environmentalist and your uncle has offered you a paid summer internship at his very successful styrofoam cup factory. Would you do it? What if you hate competition? Would you join mock trial? Second question on the authenticity assessment, does it align with your instincts? Does it continue to feel right? Are these your people? Let's say you've gone to the same summer camp for 3 years, but now it just doesn't feel right. Instincts are your spidey sense. Trust them. Third question on the authenticity assessment, are you still passionate about it? Passion is emotional energy. It's what takes us beyond a bad mood and pushes us through obstacles and fears and compels us to do something even when the conditions are tough. Speaking of conditions, let's say you love skiing so much that you're making first tracks on a 7-degree day. That's passion. And the fourth question on the authenticity assessment is, are you still curious about it? So let's say you're a musician. Do you lie in bed at night wondering how to make that one section just a little bit better? If you're still asking yourself what if questions about your thing, you're still curious about it. I know I'm still curious about cooking because I create menus for dinner parties I'll never even have. It's just where my brain goes. So there it is, my 4-question authenticity assessment. You don't need a childhood checklist. You need a check-in with yourself about your values, instincts, passion, and curiosity. So, do you need to answer yes to all 4 questions in order to stick with your thing? No. But if your answers are mostly yes, it's probably still your thing. If your answers are mostly no, it might be time to explore something new. Now, I've been assuming that you have a thing. Life is surprising. Your thing might show up in your 20s or your 40s or whenever. Who knows? If you had told me at 15 that I would love to stand waist deep in a freezing cold river, fly fishing for 6 hours, without snacks, I would have said you were crazy. Now or later, you will find your thing. Marianne Williamson said, "Your playing small doesn't serve the world." Well, doing things that aren't right for you Denying yourself happiness now for an uncertain future, it's denying your authenticity. It's playing small. So don't put off happiness until adulthood. You have this incredible, irreplaceable time. Listen to yourself and do what really matters to you. Your childhood is not a checklist. Future you will say thanks.